Hello there, everyone. How are you today? I want to welcome you to Coffee Time Career Chat Networking Edition, which we have been doing here since the beginning of the year to kind of switch things up a little bit for 2022. And so I've been having some fun pulling in some of the amazing women that I know and have met over the course of these last couple of years and even before then, and just having a little quick chat here on a Wednesday and talking about all things networking, of course, but also their businesses and what it is that they do. And with me today is the lovely Veronica Yanhs. Oh my gosh. Hey, Veronica. I'm so excited to have her here so we can talk a little bit about her business, and I want to make sure and lay it out there for her because it's a little bit on the controversial side, not the business itself, but the branding of it. And we're going to talk about that. And also, a conversation about being authentic and showing up to be who you are in a fully empowered way, because that's absolutely what we're all about here. So, Veronica, welcome.
Hello. Thanks for having me. This is a conversation that I love having. And by the way, networking prior to, say, 2020, that was such an icky word for me because I didn't network. I
Yeah.
felt like connections were more important. And I know that pretty much it can mean the same thing, but I'm just like, I've learned that how I network and connect with people is very, it's very much a personal thing and it's not just like one way of doing it. So thank you so much for having me. Like you are teaching
Absolutely.
me so many things about networking that I just am like, oh, this could be strategic. Well, it actually feels natural to me. And we'll get more into this later because I'm going to talk a lot about this. But
You're so funny. So, and it's so funny because we actually met through a networking group that we were a private women's networking group that we're both members of. But we weren't connected. We were connected through another dear friend of ours, Monica, who was a guest on this coffee chat several weeks back. And so, we all like to keep good company, but that's how we met. And then we actually did, what was it, a clubhouse together? Is that right? Yeah. Yeah. So before we dive into all of that, because clearly we've met through connecting with others and in groups and all of that. But tell us a little bit more about what it is you do and your lovely branding. Because I laughed out loud the first time that I heard you present it. I was like, oh my gosh.
you're like, who's this lady throwing around these words? But, I get that a lot. So, hey, everyone, I'm Veronica Yanhs, and I run Business Laid Bare. So, I'm the CEO, head person in charge. But what we do is we help 6 and 7 figure businesses create well lubricated and orgasmic operations to make their next level of growth and impact happen with ease, pleasure, and sustainability. So, we are a digital operations agency. We're all about working with visionaries, CEOs, and their teams make the idea come to life well, because a vision without a plan is just really expensive strategy. So here we come in with the ops. So we are like your fractional COOs, for lack of better terms, where we know where you are, we know where you want to go, and we're going to give you the roadmap to fill in those gaps so that you can actually scale and grow. And I know that scaling is such like a buzzword nowadays, but it's like
Yeah.
coming from an operations perspective, it's like that makes sense. It's like, how do you create like exponential revenue growth while minimizing how much resources, aka expenses, have to go into it? So we truly talk about scaling and profitability, because revenue doesn't mean anything to me. Like if you tell me you make 7 figures but your profit margins are like 10% or below, you don't have a lean back end. So that's what we're all about, is efficiency for greater impact, because the more money you have, the better it is that you're going to invest in it, whether it's your team, your community, generational wealth, and then the world will be better off of it for it because you had good operations.
Yeah, I love it. And it was so funny because Veronica, when I told you when we first met and you were talking about, I was like, oh my gosh, I was like, who is this? But when you lay out exactly all of the things and the powerful things that you do with your business, And the branding and all, it like it fits and it makes perfect sense, right? Because we don't want our businesses to be a pain. We want it to be pleasurable, right? And we want to be able to put ourselves fully out there and be authentic along the way. And unfortunately, that doesn't happen. And it doesn't happen whether you're in business for yourself or whether you're in your career, having done both, and to know that that can be a struggle for people, for sure. So tell me a little bit more about how you came about with the branding and what it meant for you to be there and to be that bold in laying it out there in order to get your message across.
Well, it started off with me working through childhood trauma. So maybe you're going to get some insight into what my life was like. But let's just say for the first 20 plus years of my life, and we even had this conversation shortly before, you pressed record. I was like, hey,
Yeah,
I want to be respectful of your audience because I don't want to shock them. Some people find it hard that I say the word orgasm outside the bedroom, right? So I wanted to ask you, like, hey, when you're airing this, is this going to be okay? So, sometimes I don't fully stand in who I am 100% because I want to make sure I am considerate of other people's needs. But to answer your question, I spent the first 20 plus so years of my life changing myself to fit what others needed to be. If
yep,
there's 10 people in front of me, I can change myself 10 different ways to appease all these individuals. And I forgot who I was. Like, the one voice that I needed to listen to the most was mine, and it was the one that was most neglected. So I was fortunate to be able to start my own business. And then shortly after, I'm just like, something feels weird. I'm being told by mentors and people in the business space, like that you follow who are like role models. They're just like, be yourself, but not enough to scare away business. Like, you don't want to
oh my
alienate
gosh.
people.
Be
And
yourself, but not completely yourself.
you
Oh
don't
my
want to
gosh.
like you don't want to alienate, like, say 50% of your audience. And I'm just like, well, at the same time, there's like how many billions of people out there? So I'm coming
Correct.
at it from an abundance mindset that I worked so hard to overcome because this was not something I was used to thinking about. And what felt right after a lot of introspection and journaling was like, hey, if I'm going to run a business, I want to do it my way. Like, the
Yeah,
shoulds and the need tos, it's like, well, that sounds more like somebody else's business that I'm following or a job. It's like, if I'm going to truly be a CEO and a leader that I would be proud of, it's like I would have to be 100% me. And how
right.
I show up as 100% me is that our brand is infused with kink and sex positive elements because this is who I am. Like, if you meet me offline in person, I will still throw puns at you that, and my mind will most likely be in the gutter, right? So I am who I am and I'm unapologetic about it. And it's actually helped set my business apart a lot. And I know that some people, say, well, you're just using sex because it sells. And I'm like, yeah, sex does sell. But do you know how many of my clients have said, and you just said this yourself, it feels so natural. It feels so authentic. It doesn't feel pushed and forced. And I'm just like, it's because this is me.
Well,
And
the other thing about that, though, I'm sorry to interrupt, but here's the
no,
thing, because the very, oh my gosh, this is so powerful. Because the very thing that you're talking about is, again, pushing against conventional wisdom and the norm. Because even with that, people want to put certain things in a box and talking about, for example, sex only in this context, because if it's in any other context, then there's something lurid about it, not beautiful, right? And that it's not connected with all these other positive things. Just like we can do that with hello networking, right? The very thing we started off is like most people cringe. I admit all the time when I'm talking to folks, two things that people hate the most professionally: public speaking and networking. And I love them both, right? So, where does that put me? Where does that put you when we're both dealing with issues, pulling things together that most people are totally uncomfortable with either engaging in or talking about? So, it's that whole piece of pushing ourselves to show that you can still be fully empowered and connect and be authentic with what it is you want to do and how you approach it without kowtowing to, other people's whims or what they think is acceptable. And that's tough for, hello, I'm just going to lay it out there, especially not just for women, but to women of color. So there
Yeah.
we are.
And apparently it's already like the fact that I am a woman of color who is talking so openly about sex. And it's not like I'm in your face about it, but the fact that I am comfortable in my sexuality, that apparently is already polarizing enough. And
Yes.
so it's just by existing, like I don't have to say anything. I just show up. You know, if you look at my homepage, is me pretty much naked, covering all the private parts up. It's like it's already a conversation starter. And I'm just like, well, this is why it's called business laid bare. I literally have nothing up my sleeve. My laundry bill is most likely doing the environment really good right now because I don't really wear any clothes. But it's just like, you know, this is who I am. I'm showing up laid bare. And to be laid bare for me means that I've stripped away all the ugly sweaters that others have bestowed upon me, whether that's
Yes.
like limiting beliefs, cultural expectations, societal pressures, family pressures. And I'm just like, now that I'm bare, both literally and metaphorically, like, how do I want to live my life? How do I want to show up? And the first thing that comes to mind is like, what if people don't like me? What if people
Yes.
think I'm too much? Or, and I've had people say, hey, I'm going to give you some like wisdom from the most loving perspective. And when I hear something like that, I'm like, I know it's going to be one of three things. And it's mostly the first thing. They're like, if you could tone down your brand a little bit, you would make more money. Or
Mhm.
because what we do as operational consultants, fractional CEOs, there are plenty of businesses that does that,
Yep.
right? That do that. And like there's like the big four, like the Bain and Companies and the McKinseys, the Boston
Yeah.
Group. I think you've heard of them, right? I don't
Yes.
try to make an assumption. So they're like management consultants, and we're actually a management consultant firm too, but people don't understand that. So we just say operations, right? And they're like, you could get more clients just like them. And so instead of people going to you, they're going to, you know, Bain and Company because maybe you're too sexually out there. And I'm like, well, if they can't handle me for being 100% me, the energy is never going to be right in general. Like you could give me
Correct.
all this money and it wouldn't feel right.
You
And
know what? I mean, and you just said a mouthful, but it's the reality is
I'm
people
good at that.
presume that, especially as you go along, and it took me years to realize this, right? People presume that the priority is always the dollar. And at some point, people they learn or they don't, is that sometimes the choice is not about that. If the choice is about making sure that you live with integrity and that you are honest in who you are and how you present yourself, because anybody can sell themselves for some dollars. But what is that going to do at the end of the day? How is that going to feed your legacy? Is that really where you're going to, how is that really going to help you represent who you are? And because the wrong presumption is that you want to be a McKinsey or Bain or whatever, all of those things. What if that's not even what you want? Because again, that's people putting off their expectations onto you, as opposed to sitting down and having a conversation about, wow, that's fascinating. Now tell me a little bit more, because that's how I approached you. After I finished giggling silly, then I was like, okay, tell me. I know there's a story there. Tell me about it. And that's how you build the relationships. And then when people understand that, that's how you can share it. And then that's how you can be referred out to people who understand not just what your brand is, but how you will operate when you're engaging with them. And that is truly powerful. It is very powerful. And I think some people are just scared of that.
Thank you. And it means so much to honor our humanity. So, yes, I trademarked orgasmic operations and it actually went through. So, there is a registered mark next to that phrase because we have a three-part framework. And the reason why I'm bringing it up is because it's like a three-part Venn diagram.
Yeah.
I love a good Venn diagram. And so,
I'm
it's
not going to tell you that that's a little nerdy, Veronica, but okay.
okay. So, let me just tell you, there's a project management tool out there or
Yeah.
like a principle called like, Gantt charting something.
Yeah.
I'm going to be releasing a shirt that says I can't even. So if anybody wants in on this,
Oh
because
my
this is
God,
my
I
kind of
love
humor,
it.
I'm a project manager at heart. So, that's
Yes,
me. But
I
so
love it.
the very first circle, okay, well, a Venn diagram happens simultaneously, but if we were to break it down, it is people. That is the first pillar of the orgasmic operations framework, because we are not robots at this present time. And I don't think we ever will be. Like, yes, we have all these automations and these software and this tech, but who's behind all of that?
Yeah,
It's people at the end of the day. So we are a people first and pleasure based business. And that's how we approach our strategy. If it doesn't feel good to the people using them, if we have not understood, like, say, how you work, Patricia, like how you think, how you work, how you succeed and thrive is probably very different than me, right? I could be
yeah,
even something as simple as a night owl versus, an early bird, right? It's like understanding people and then creating solutions around that requires a lot of compassion and empathy. And so when
that's
people work
really
with us,
good.
thank you. And when people work with us, they know like we are all about feeling good. Because, like, if you love chocolate cake and I gave you an apple pie, you probably would like it, but it's not your favorite, right? But if I gave you a chocolate fudge, triple decker brownie thing and you just were a chocolate fanatic, like, wouldn't
Which
you
I
be
am,
head?
by the way. So you're like
Oh, good.
singing my songs right here.
Wouldn't you be head over heels in love, wanting more of that? So that's how we create operations that feel good and stick, because you can create all the operations and systems in the world, but if the team members don't adopt to it or don't get excited, we would have just gotten paid to not be really be effective. So when we talk about like change management and like all these things about how do you learn to adopt to change, it's like, well, align it with how you thrive, align it with your personality. And so a lot of operations folk just go straight to the apps. And I'm like, that's just like the tip of
Yeah, and
the
something you
iceberg.
just said that's so important too, which is you can create something and it will do the job, but if it doesn't click, is it really doing the job? And then it gets to, well, then what's the real value of what you brought to the table? Because did you meet the requirements? Sure. But if they're not going to last beyond, the next 48 hours, as far as people really diving in, then someone's paid a bunch of money for something that they're going to put on a shelf. And that's not what you
Exactly.
want.
No. So before we ever work with any client, well, when we start engaging with them, the very first thing we do are like team interviews, like
Mm,
literally just get to know them as people. Like, we ask people, like, what is your zone of genius? And sometimes you get answers that blow you away. I'm like, if this
yeah.
is your zone of genius, then why are you in this seat? No wonder there's some friction, because it takes you longer and it's not how your brain thinks. And so it's like understanding you as a person is the first thing that ever gets talked about with us. So that's why I'm just like connecting with you, having conversations. It's like we are people at the end of the day, and business is about treating people well, relationships. And so this coffee chat that you have is like so important, because it's like networking is more than just doing this with like your business card, because
Yes.
that's what I used to be on the receiving end of. And I'm just like, no, thank you.
And I hate that. I tell people all the time, I think I haven't had a new business card in like 4 years. So even pre-pandemic, I had already ditched my business cards because that's not what it's really all about. I'd rather connect. I tell people all the time, I'd rather connect with 5 people really well than 50 people and get their business cards and not know them at all. Because I can do something with those 5 people that will build some sustainable relationships that will get some depth and some longevity to it. And that's really what it's about. The problem is most people don't want to make the investment of time, of money, whatever the resources are. Same thing that you see, I'm sure, when someone comes to you saying, "Oh, I need this," and you're like, "Okay, well, here's the thing. It's not just the money, but it's literally an investment of your time and your mind, right? You got to get to a mindset shift, and everyone's not always ready for that."
No, you're so right. Which is why, like, when you asked me about like networking as we were kind of pre-gaming, pre-gaming. And by the way, I can't drink. I can't save myself if I couldn't drink my to save my life. But like, I was thinking about like how do I network best? What does that mean? And so for me, I took the strengths assessment. It's now called
Mm,
like Gallup Strengths or something. And my number one strength, and I didn't know that this was a strength. Like I was like, I thought it was just being a decent human being, is something called relator.
yeah.
And it's the ability to cultivate deep and meaningful relationships rather quickly. And I'm like, but I thought this was just me being nice, or that this is just, being decent. Like I didn't
Yeah.
know that it was actually a strength, or that some people just had no ability to do this.
Yes.
So connecting one-on-one like this, or with anyone, feels not transactional. It feels
Yes.
really positive and wholesome. Like that's a really good word, is wholesome, because yes, integrity is one of my core values. And so you hit the nail right on the head regarding that earlier. And so it's like, how do I want to show up? And I am not a spray and pray. I'm more like intentional, quality over quantity, unless
Yes.
it's food. And so
We agree on that. We
yes.
agree on that.
And so it's really nice. And when it comes to like networking in general, like yes, connecting one on one like this is what feels me. But like some people, I don't know. Like when I meet someone for the first time, I don't talk about business really. Like
Right.
I always start off with like, if it depending, because I read the situation and the energy, and I'm just like, okay, well, first of all, I want to get to know you, but you have to tell me what your like top 10 favorite foods are, at least. If you can't do top 1, do top 10, because I would be a
I
top 10er.
love that. I love that, Veronica, because I do the same thing. I mean, it's that whole thing of like, you say reading the room and you're kind of, and I know it throws people off because when I start off on a coffee chat, whatever, like I don't dive straight into business conversation either. Like we're probably going to spend several minutes talking about something completely unrelated. But I learned that along the way, not just from myself and what I did, but also from a couple of really dear friends and colleagues who were always very deliberate when we catch up after months of not seeing each other. And it's supposed to be a business catch up meeting, but the first words out of their mouth is like, how are you doing? How's your family? How are you doing that? And it's that piece, again, like you said a little while ago, about putting people first and remembering that we're all people. There is so much value in that. And we've learned the value of that over the course of the last couple of years. And it's one of those things I know. I think I shared, when I was talking about creating that, maintaining professional relationships in a crisis, when I created that masterclass, that's literally what it's all about. It's like people are like, oh, well, how do I keep connected and do this? I'm like, treat people like you want to be treated in the middle of a stinking pandemic, which is, hey, how are you doing? Is there anything I can help you with? Or do you just need some to vent? Because sometimes people just need to vent and then they're like, oh, I'm sorry, we can talk about business next time. But that's
I
a
mean, like,
reality.
yeah, like you and I were talking about your son's incredible athletic skills. Like that, things like this matter to me. Like business is just one of the many facets. Granted, it's a very big facet right now,
Yeah.
but it's like it's not the only thing that fuels us. And that's why I don't believe in work-life balance, because it's all an integration. It's like work-life
Oh my
blend
God. Oh my gosh.
integration.
So you have no idea. I'm sorry, you just made my heart sing because so y'all, Veronica and I have not had this level of conversation, but literally, Veronica, you are about to learn that I say that exact thing. I am not a work-life balance person. That I don't believe in balance, but I completely believe in integration. Like you can find my words quoted on that from years ago. So we are in sync, friend, because it is so important because things can get out of balance, but you can still live a very integrated life by recognizing who you are and not trying to put one part of you away in order to deal with another. Because it's just going to end up with a person who's out of whack.
And it's hard because like I can be considered a workaholic, but at the same time I also love what I do. Like I mean, when does it get old when I say it? We have our hands up somebody's back end at any given time, which is true, right? We have multiple clients, a handful of multiple clients. And so it's like I'm working all the time, because if I'm not physically working, my brain, all the
Yes.
ideas, all the fun. But at the same time, it's like I love what I do. And sometimes inspiration strikes at like 11 p.m. when you get on a call with your business coach or your business friend, and you're like, hey, so I was messaging, I had this idea. Oh, you're free at this time. It's 11
Yep.
o'clock. Okay. And so, it's just the beauty of being able to honor that, and that you don't have to subscribe to necessarily like a 9 to 5 mentality. Like, I take my work home, I work from home. I'm like the worst example for someone who has a good work life balance, but also I integrate it when I can. And I know what's also important is all turning off my brain. So
Yes.
it's just life, and you do the best that you can to be happy and to feel fulfilled and to feel joy, and like connecting with people such as yourselves. Like, that's one of them for me. Like, it fuels me. No wonder it's my number one strength.
Yes, I love it. Oh my gosh. I have like all the chills and all the things. Okay, like we could keep going for like forever. So I'm going to, but we're not. So we're going to have to figure out a time to plan and do it like another chat. That's what we'll do. Okay. So, but so that said, before we get ready to close out, I do want to know what is your, like, just like if you were to come off the top of your head, what's your greatest challenge when it comes to connecting, especially knowing that you are a relator? And then what's your greatest strength, or what's your, something that really that you find the most effective when you're connecting and networking with others?
Yeah, so I would say a challenge for me is because I'm an I'm an introvert, and you were like, "You're an introvert."
Yes, I did laugh and call her out about this, but it's okay.
So, yes, I am an introvert, and so sometimes I don't reach out to people. A lot of my best friends, and I will say I was proud that I reached out to you first. So,
She
usually
did.
I don't, and it's not because I don't want to. I just don't. I have that like nagging head thing in my head that says like, "Don't be a bother." Again, you're gonna learn. I got some childhood trauma that I'm still working on. It is what it is. But like, that's I would say that's my biggest challenge, is actually finding the right people to connect with. And then
Hmm.
maybe another one would be like time, right? Because I am the CEO. It's like taking calls like this, networking. It's very much an intentional practice because time is very finite. And
Yes.
so I would say those are the two biggest challenges for me personally.
Hmm.
And like I would, yeah. And then on the flip side, this is how I do best, like one-on-one conversations, talking about whatever feels right. It's like, sure, I have some things I'd like to know, like, hey, okay, at the end of the day, what do you do? So I can write it down, keep my eyes out. And then, like, who are you looking for? Like, how can I be of service? Can we have some like collab things? But then, other than that, it's just getting to know you as a person so that we are true to our brand and what I believe in terms of being people first in and out of business. And so, yeah, I would say getting to know Patricia as you as a person, what drives you, what gets you excited. Is food the way to your heart? It is for me. And I would say that that's it. Like, I'm pretty simple. Like, one-on-one connections is one of my favorites, and I'm glad that I get to
Awesome.
do them.
Yes, I'm glad you get to too. I'm so excited. I'm so thankful that you took the time out of your busy schedule to come share with us here on Coffee Time Career Chat today. And where can we find you, Miss Veronica? We're going to make sure and drop that in the comments, and also let us know, like, what are you working on, or what do you want people to know about what's next for you?
Yeah, so you can, if operations is something that's important to you, which it should be, hint, hint, yes, I'm biased, but it's true. Uh, and you want to know more information about this, sign up for my newsletter, because that's where I write content, and we want to share content that actually matters. Because if it doesn't feel good, then your whole business ecosystem isn't going to feel good, right? So go to businesslaidbare.com/newsletter to sign up for a newsletter. And I don't send them weekly because it's like, I don't want to be forced to do something. Like, if I truly have something to say, I will write it. I'm not just going to write it for the sake of writing. So sign up for the newsletter. And what else was I going to say? Oh, yeah. Where else to find me? I'm on LinkedIn,
Yes.
Instagram, all
Okay.
those good places. And then
Awesome.
in terms of what's coming up, we're actually launching a group program called the Orgasmic Operations Accelerator. This is targeted
Yay.
towards service-based businesses in May. And
Okay.
what we've learned is that we have tons of visionaries, people who have even ops members on the business, but it's just like they don't have all the systems it takes to make an offer scalable and pleasurable, like especially as service-based businesses, because it's tied to, like, our money is almost tied to time sometimes. And
Yes.
so we know that there are so many different systems that go into making one thing work really well, especially the thing that pays you money. So the accelerator will be about us teaching people how to design systems with our philosophy and how to be strategic about it, and then having them implement it while the CEOs like give feedback, so that because the CEOs are busy enough as it is. So that's what we're
Awesome.
launching in May.
Yay, I'm so excited. So many great things. I invite and ask everyone to reach out to Veronica, connect with her on all the, social media platforms, and take her up on our offer to check out her newsletter and learn more about her. Thank you so much once again, Veronica, for being with us today. If you are loving Coffee Time Career Chat and doing the networking, catch us on Mondays where I'm teaching, and on Wednesdays when we're interviewing, having some great conversations with the lovely ladies in my professional network. As always, I look forward to seeing you all again next week. Take care until then. Bye bye.